All right, beautiful people, welcome to what we will call episode 51 of the Athletic Philosopher podcast. I am your humble host, Jordan Goldstein, former university professor in sport history, sport philosophy, sport sociology, little psychology here and there. Really loved teaching, didn't like much else at the university, fought a couple battles, made a few enemies, got on some blacklists. We parted ways. Now, I am full-hearted into the world of fitness coaching and life coaching, entwined in what I like to call embodiment coaching. I also do group coaching and endurance training coaching on Team Tribal as the Tribal Professor. And in this episode, I want to take a little time to talk about trail running, the way time passes, a very famous philosophical quote about time and nature, and my experiences coming back to Canada and running on trails that, were my home trails not so long ago, but seem almost distant, since I've moved to the United States, the North Shore of Chicago for the past 8 months. So it's a little bit of a personal reflection. It's a little bit of a philosophical excursion, and it's a little bit of a love letter to trail running. So this is going to be a fun one, team. All right, so let's give a little context into trail running, and in particular my experiences in trail running. Then I am going to give you this quote, this very famous philosophical quote about, we'll say, like time and how time changes things. And then I will bring you to the present with trail running to bring it all together. And the hope of this episode is to inspire you to view your athletic endeavors, your training, and your competition as a continuum of character development and as a continuum of self-discovery and self-knowledge. So no matter where we are in our journeys as athletes, as people who exercise, as people who want to use physical culture to better know ourselves and then to transfer the things that we learn about ourselves in the athletic arena into the ways we act and behave outside of the arena. And I want the inspiration to be like a seriousness of care, a seriousness of attention, and a seriousness of intention when it comes to exercising and competing and training in ways that we absolutely love. Okay. I'm not sure if I've ever done a podcast on just my love of trail running, or like a love letter to trail running, or how I fell in love with trail running. It's probably littered throughout all of the previous 50 episodes. So thanks for listening to all those guys. But I'm not sure I've spelled it out like concretely here. And that's what I'm going to do to start off with, right? Like, how do you fall in love with an activity you've never done before? And then how does that activity animate the spirit to drive towards excellence within that activity, right? So I was somebody growing up, I wasn't like surrounded by the woods. I wasn't always out in nature or on the trails, but every time I seemed to find myself kind of in the forest, I always remembered those. Those always stood out to me as these meaningful moments of adventure or almost like a homecoming. If you were to ask me what's your favorite sport that you played, or what was your favorite physical game that you played when you were growing up, and the answer to me was always very clear. It was Flags in the Forest. Flags in the Forest was my favorite game. And to give you a sense of what this game looked like, we used to play this in our hockey camp. So this was on the big university campus in my hometown in London, Ontario. This is before they built all of these really nice athletic facilities. It back out on these open fields. So this is, if anybody out there knows about the University of Western University in London, Ontario, you will know about TD Waterhouse Stadium. That's where the football team plays. But before that stadium was built, that space was like open grassland. There was a couple of baseball diamonds, but it was basically open grass. And on both sides, right, there was, I'd say, about 100 to 200 feet of forest with some trails, one backing up to a river, the other backing up to kind of like a cliff. And we would be divided into two teams. There'd be sort of like a center line that ran all the way through this sort of open grass field. You'd have one team on one side, one team on the other. So there's this giant open area, okay? And flags, it's like a structured game of tag, okay? So when you're on your team's side, you're not able to be tagged, okay? But when you enter into enemy territory, you can be tagged, and then you've got to go to jail. And jail is one of these baseball diamonds, and you have to wait until like somebody on your team comes and jailbreaks you effectively. And then you got to get back over to your side, and then you can go back over. And what you do, like you cross over into the enemy territory, you got to get past this sort of like grassy no man's land, and then you get into the forest. And in the forest, there's a flag. Like each team hides their flag somewhere in the forest. They're not allowed to guard it. They can be somebody that's like 10 or 15 feet away, but nobody can be like actively on it. And so the point is to like sneak around in the forest, get the flag unnoticed, and run back and get it to your side of the field. And then whoever does that wins. And I can't even tell you how much I love this game. Oh my gosh. Like, this was the most fun. A couple other forest games that we used to play that are coming back. I forget the name of it, but it was something about predators and prey and omnivores, right? And you would either be maybe the game was just called Predator. I'm not even sure. But these were the games that I loved the most. Like I played soccer, high level soccer. I played hockey. We would play all kinds of sports. My friends and I, we invented our own sports. But Flags in the Forest was probably the most fun I think I ever had playing sports ever when I was growing up, and it had to do with that running or sneaking around or getting into that kind of like hunter mode when you're in the forest, right? And that's something that I think always stayed with me. I always like going hiking. I always like going camping. And, my wife, she was much more experienced in things like camping, certainly like overnight camping, portaging and those things. And so, that was something that we were able to bond over, and she was able to sort of teach me and bring me more exposure to. And, right around the time that we were getting married, this is like 2012, 2013, I was about to turn 30. Is coming up to turning 30, and I had this ideal in my mind of, by the time you hit 30, you better be in better shape than when you were 20, because you're going to need to have those habits established for when you are in your 30s and your 40s and beyond, especially like as a dad, somebody with a career, lots of responsibilities. It's a very difficult thing to start up a fitness habit. And so I really wanted to take advantage of these last few years of my 20s in order to really dial in on my own style and fitness. And I had tried a whole bunch of different things, maybe like a dozen different times. At home exercises, going to use machines. I found some success going to the pool in between some of my classes when I was a PhD student, but it wasn't something I was doing like maybe once a week, like maybe twice a week, but it didn't constitute a fitness habit, right? And growing up playing soccer, like I got cardio for days, guys, and that never left me. And I sort of resolved myself to trying to go for a run one time, because I was trying everything to get consistent. And I started running on, an asphalt path that winds through the Thames River, the big river that runs through London, Ontario, which was nice. But then a friend told me, hey, if you like that, why don't you go out to this provincial park just outside the city? I go out there and I've run on the trails out there and it's awesome. I think you really enjoy it. So I said, sure, I'll go try it. Sounds great. I love hiking. I love being out in the forest and I can run. So let's see what it's all about. I'm not even joking you, team. Within 5 minutes, I was hooked. Within 5 minutes, I was hooked. And I think it has to go back to that, flags in the forest. You're running through the woods. There's something primal about it. There's something instinctual about it. It's very romantic. It's also dynamic. It's so much fun when, I was still running in a way that most people run when they start running, which is like running as fast as you can and just redlining the whole time. And when you're trail running and you're redlining and you're going as fast as you can, like you are called to do some pretty darn athletic things. Like you're jumping and bounding and leaping and balancing and pivoting and just moving in all of these fantastic ways, like up and down hills, over rocks and roots, high stepping, low stepping, long stepping, short stepping, side stepping, bounding, leaping, jumping. And I was running down this bigger hill, and there's this part of this hill where it kind of goes like this. There's a little bump up, and I took the little bump up and I lifted, and everybody knows the feeling of like weightlessness, the feeling of flight, the feeling of flying, and it's like I got to catch air. And I was hooked. Now, after about 2 kilometers, or just over a mile or so, you come up to this giant 3-story staircase to get up one of these cliffs, and I was dead. The week before, I go out and I can run 10 kilometers in whatever 50 minutes and change, like pretty close to 50 minutes, no problem, on this asphalt path. But I could barely make it. On the trail. It was just so rough and it was so dynamic, and the challenge and the dynamic variability of the way in which you're forced to move. Like I knew, like I gotta do this. I gotta keep doing this. I want to keep doing this. And trail running became my sport. Trail running became the thing that I loved to do. I eventually got up to, 3 trail runs a week. Then we moved from London, and I had to say goodbye to this beautiful trail out in Kamoka Provincial Park. We moved to Toronto for a few years, and I was pretty upset because I'm thinking, where am I going to find a forest to run in? Where am I going to find like kilometers or miles and miles of forest trail that's going to be as up and down, as windy, as this technical single track kind of stuff? Where am I gonna find that? And luckily, this was right at the time when a giant national park had just been carved out just at the very far eastern edge of the city of Toronto. We were living in the East End, and this is about like a 20-minute drive on the freeway to get to the parking lot. And this trail was fantastic. It was exactly what I was looking for. I was in Rouge Valley National Park, and I ran that trail religiously, as often as I could, for just over 2 years before we moved up to the rural area, the rural village up on the Niagara Escarpment. And then I spent the last 8 years running on the Bruce Trail. A couple home tracks that were close to me. My favorite spot out in Monocliffs Provincial Park, where I went and did my long runs every weekend, what I call the sacred effort, where I just get to go at sunrise and run for as long as I want. Because during the week, right, you have obligations to family and to work. I was still a professor at this time, so I was commuting a couple days a week. And then the other days were filled with, prepping for lectures, doing my own writing and research, grading papers, university administrative stuff. So I didn't have the time to go out. I also didn't have the endurance and the fitness to be going long, but that's maybe part of the second part of this podcast we'll get to. So trail running was really this like love. this absolute joy of exercise. And it's the thing that finally got me disciplined in terms of strength training or resistance training or calisthenics or stretching and mobility work, right? Because I recognize like this is beating up my body. I'm running in such a hard way and I'm putting in a lot of effort. I can't be doing this every day. I don't have the time, but I don't want to run on these days that I'm not trail running, but I want to be fitter. Like I want to be strong because I recognize, man, you need a strong upper body to power up hills and to maintain balance if you're trying to sprint down them, or if you're trying to go quick, right, through these very tight little turns. Like you need to be able to coordinate your entire body together. So, the love of one activity informed me of what I needed to do in terms of cross training. This led me to like weighted jump ropes and steel maces and steel clubs, these sort of dynamic, full body ways that I could train a lot of core work, a lot of rotational work, a lot of shoulder and chest and upper back, right? Coordinating my body to move in dynamic ways so that when I got out onto the trail, I would be ready. Something like jump rope trains your feet for rhythm, for quickness, for explosiveness. A steel mace and a steel club is going to really impact your upper body, but in a rotational kind of a way. I also use it as cross training for golf, which is, rotation is very important in golf, especially your hip rotation, but also being coordinated with your entire body, right? So the love of trail running, moved me to ways of training that I also enjoyed, but that, primarily aided in trail running, the thing that I really wanted to do. Now, what is this quote? What is this quote, this philosophical quote? Now that I've outlined, the genesis of trail running, what is this quote? What is this philosopher? Who is he? What does he want us to hear? So this is from the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus. And Heraclitus comes a little bit before Socrates and Aristotle and Plato, and he's a very influential philosopher. His big thing was figuring out change and permanence. It was one of the big things that he was interested in. Why do things change? Do things stay the same? Is there such thing as constancy? Is there such thing as permanence? Is all permanence really a form of change? Really fundamental stuff when you're talking about like the basic building blocks of philosophy and, just our ability to understand and know things in the world. And I'm sure many of you have actually heard this quote, but I'm going to read it out a couple times here so that we can get the full heft of this wisdom. So Heraclitus, quote, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." Right? No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he is not the same man. What's very cool about this quote, there's so many cool things about it, but what's very cool about this quote is, science kind of catches up to philosophy. Science catches up to conventional wisdom. It never really replaces it. It just kind of confirms it. Your body regenerates itself every 7 years in terms of cells. Like every 7 years, every cell in your body has been replaced by a new cell. So even the cellular integrity of your body is different. But then it's like, but I'm the same person, even though none of my cells are the same as when they were 7 years ago. So you've iterated yourself. You've created replicas of yourself effectively when it comes to cell reproduction. And this brings up another interesting, philosophical exercise that sort of tests out, what is permanent, what is change, what is constant. And that's Theseus's ship, right? And it's the exact same thing as the body, right? It's like the thought experiment with Theseus's ship is that, you start out with this ship. It's got all the original pieces. And just over the course, we'll just imagine it's like 10 years. Over the course of the 10 years of this ship, certain parts break down, right? And they get replaced with new parts. And by year 10, there's no original part left on the ship. The ship is there. Like, the specifications are the same, the dimensions are the same, the way it operates is the same, but no original part of the ship remains because they've all been replaced. Is it the same ship or is it not the same ship? Heraclitus' quote suggests it's different. No man ever steps in the same river twice, for he is not the same man, and the river is not the same. What does that mean? Right? It means the me of today is not the me of tomorrow. The me of today is not the me in 20 years, right? I've changed. I have different experiences. I have different knowledge. I have different attitudes. I may have different values. Okay? I'm not the same person that I was. The river itself, it's also not the same water that touched me. Just think about going into a river at different parts of the season, like up in Canada where I grew up. Go in the river in the summer, there might not even be a river because you might have a month of drought and the river's so low and the water is just like not the stuff you want to be in, right? But in spring, when the winter's over and the thaw of the snow and the ice and sort of fresh rain comes in, you get this churning, powerful water that can sweep you away. And in the winter, you can walk on the river because it's frozen over with ice. So the river itself is dynamic, and the river itself is always changing, and the water is always recycling itself in terms of the science behind the water cycle. So this quote gives us this sense that even if we feel as if we're doing the same thing over and over again, it's actually different. It's actually different. And it's different in two very powerful ways. I'm different, and the thing that I'm doing is different. Or the place that I'm doing the thing is different. Right? And I've always thought about trail running this way. Like, I think this is true of every exercise. I don't think you do the same exercise twice, right? Like if you go to the gym and you run on the treadmill and you go 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and let's say you do the exact same workout, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Let's just say it's a 3-mile treadmill run and you run the same pace, okay? Each one of those is different. Even though it's the same, you're the same, the distance is the same. Heck, you may even pick the same treadmill. Let's say you're on the same machine every single time. They're all different. What happened to you on Monday affects the way you show up to the treadmill on Monday. Maybe it's a Monday blues, and I'm just like, I had a tough weekend, and like I'm just kind of dragging, and the run's not that great. Tuesday, maybe Tuesday was a great day at work. Like maybe you're in sales, maybe you made a big close or something. Like you're just on fire, and you get to the treadmill and you're like floating on air. It doesn't even feel like you're moving. Doesn't even feel like you're even trying to go. Right? Wednesday, hump day. Maybe it's just like go through the motions. Okay. Like Thursday, you might not even be sort of there because you're forecasting yourself and it's basically just like road. You're forecasting yourself out to the weekend. On Friday you might go extra hard. Because it's like, well, I don't run on the weekends, and I want to go out and go to a nice restaurant, or maybe have a few with the friends, like whatever it is. Even though I've done the same distance, maybe at the same speed, like my experience is totally different. And if like the treadmill, if the treadmill itself doesn't get like relubricated, or if it doesn't get serviced, every day, then the treadmill you run on Friday is not the same treadmill you run on on Monday either. So even like in that example where we might think everything is so standardized, right? Like I don't think it's the same experience. And trail running, it's so much more dynamic. No trail run is the same. And comparing trail runs against each other is like impossible in my estimation. Like to give you an example, I had this I had these standard routes. I had these standard trail running routes when I lived up in the township of Erin, up on the Niagara Escarpment when we lived in the country, right? I had these two places where I knew how long it took me to drive there. I knew exactly how long each of these routes were, so I knew how long it would take me to run and then to drive back. And that's very important when you got to like pick up your kids, you got to get home for dinner, you got to get back on the weekend to go do all the family stuff. So trail running, a lot of it is adventure. A lot of it is, I'm going to go to a new place and explore. But when you're running in a new place, like you just don't know the twists and the turns or the ups and the downs. You don't know where the hills are. You don't know where like the dead ends could be. You don't know what is open trail or what could be like overgrown. You don't know what's muddy. You don't know what's potentially covered with ice. Like you just don't know. So it's all an adventure. But eventually in trail running, just like with all exercise, you want some sort of a standardized metric. You want some way to measure your progress, to know if you're improving, if you're getting faster, right? If you're getting more fit, if you're getting more endurance. So I had these two trails. One is the Mono Cliffs long run on the weekend that I mentioned earlier, and the other was a beautiful 4-mile technical trail down at Scottsdale Farm and Silver Creek Conservation Area. Used to park off the 8th line. 8th line just south of the 32nd side road. If anybody wants great trail access, there you go. Go to Erin. Actually, technically, this is in Halton. So you got to go to the Halton-Erin town line, which is the 32nd side road. You can go south on the 8th line, and then you'll find your access there to this amazing trail. But every time I go to that trail, you know what I would think in my mind? Like, this is a new trail run. This is not the same. If I went on a Tuesday, and Tuesday was sunny and warm, and I would go on a Thursday, and Thursday was raining, those are not the same trail runs. They're not the same. You don't have the same ability to run on slippery rocks, on routes, and in mud that you do on like a nice dry track, right? So looking for progress between one or the other, like, good luck. Your brain's got to figure out some other way to figure out like if you're improving or not, because the times that you get on a trail where conditions are the same, few and far between, if really ever, when you're talking about like the same temperature, the same terrain conditions, your state, right? So it's like the trail is the river and the trail is never the same. But when you show up, you're also not the same. Like a lot of times I would be finishing up work. So like kind of like the end of my day, I remember driving from my prof job, like an hour away to come and run this trail after 5 hours of lecturing, 2 hours, 1 hour commuting, both ways. Not a lot of calories, sometimes no calories, right? You're just drained. And you're thinking, shoot, like this is going to be slow and bad. And all of a sudden you're just smoking times, and setting PRs. Like you don't show up to the trail in the same psychological state, in the same physical state. If you're running 3 times a week and it's the third time in 3 days, like how springy are your legs going to be versus the first time? And then are you going to judge the time between the two? Like it doesn't make any sense. The best you can do is push your hardest and figure out what you feel. This is why I'm such a big proponent of exercising by feel, is because of my experience in trail running, where it's like you look down at the numbers and they're meaningless. They're effectively meaningless as some sort of a calibration mechanism in between your different runs, because every trail run is different. Every single trail run is different. But here's the cool part about sports, and here's the cool part about something like trail running as it relates to this Heraclitus quote. If you recognize the feel, then you can actually start to gauge progress. You can actually start to gauge improvement. And you can use the training as kind of a barometer of your spirit. And that can be this constant part, even if the water changes and even if I change, something like my willpower, something like the truest essence of my being, my spirit, well, that can be measured against each other. And I can do that through feel. I can do that through the heart. I can't really do that through the brain, which is why like numbers don't make a lot of sense when trying to compare trail runs. Like, they're helpful. They can be secondary and tertiary markers, but they cannot be primary markers. Right? So the way to, in a sense, phenomenologically solve this issue of change and permanence — phenomenology is the fancy philosophical word for the philosophy of experience — it's like through my experience, I can create a consistent gauge. I can create a metric based on feel, and then I can appraise the feel at different time periods in order to gauge what I'm gaining or losing from the activity. It's a very interesting way to think about it and go about it, right? Because if all of my cells in my body have been replaced over 7 years, but I retain the same values and the same principles and the same attitude, yeah, physically I may not be the same, but I might be more similar than I've ever been. I might have such a constancy to my being that no matter what changes around me or how I change, I'm kind of always the same. Now we're getting into sort of the paradox. We're bringing a little bit of the East into a little bit of the West. It's a little bit of the yin and a little bit of the yang, which I definitely appreciate. And when thinking now about, what I've been doing for the past couple weeks back up here in Canada, like, I haven't been away for that long. It's been like 7 months since I was living in Canada, 8 months. It hasn't even been that long since I've ran some of these trails. Like, I was back in Ontario in April and I ran this Rouge Valley Trail. Did I? Yeah, we were in Toronto. I must have. And I ran some of the trails down in London, in my hometown. And it gives me a very cool experience, like visceral experience of this Heraclitus quote, because I'm going back to these trails that I used to be on all the time, but it's like so clear that I'm not the same person. It's so clear that I'm not the same person now than when I started running the trails, not just in a biological sense, but like in so many different ways. Like, when I started running trails, I was a PhD student and a professor. Now I don't work in the university. Now I coach based on my love of trail running and my knowledge of trail running and endurance sports, which was birthed through this love of trail running. And in particular, trail running in this way, based on feel, based on passion, and based on an understanding that I'm out there to learn about myself, to discover myself truthfully, and then figure out ways to extend and apply that. So, for example, it takes a lot of courage to run fast. And you don't think that's true? You haven't run fast enough because you haven't hurt enough, because fast running is psychological terror and physical domination. Okay? So fast running requires courage. It requires a tremendous amount of courage. Fast running in a place where the wrong step can break your leg off, where you can tumble down and smash your face on a rock. You could fall off a cliff. Yeah. Right? You're going to need some courage. And the more you do it, the more courage is going to be sort of sewn into the fabric of your DNA, both biologically in terms of repeating behaviors and strengthening synaptic connections in the brain and tying those to bodily sensations, right? But also just in character and in repetition. And that type of initial courage, that was tied to love of the activity. This is like where I gained fortitude to effectively torpedo my academic career by standing up for free speech and then standing up against medical coercion. Both things that lots of professors would come to me in secret and say, I wish I had your courage. I wish I had your bravery to stand up. I didn't even have tenure when I decided to fight the administration on free speech grounds. They were the censorious, authoritarian tyrants. And I thought something like, open inquiry and objective analysis of two different viewpoints, that's more the reason why we should be at university, right, is to open and stretch our minds and listen to other ideas and then figure out ways to evaluate them honestly. No, it's to promulgate a particular ideology and then brand anybody who doesn't agree as a heretic and kick them out. Like, that's what the university is. It's run by shamans and medicine men. It's not run by people who care about thought. Anyways. But it was this like courage from trail running that helped me discover the true part of me, which is like a fighter on principle and someone who's willing to live by principle and then ultimately like to die by principle. And you might say, like, dude, like, don't be so serious, but you just go to 2020 and 2021 and 2022 and stuff was wild. What was happening, guys? It was not cool, but I still managed to stay convicted to myself. And that's because of the self-discovery process of the trail running. So when I now come back, I'm 39. I started trail running when I was 26, basically. So I've been doing this for a while. And there's so many things that I might look upon when it comes to going back and running old trails as a new me, even though I'm an older me versus a younger me. Like, it's a really interesting dynamic. And this is why that Heraclitus quote just sticks out so much in my mind. Because this is exactly how I feel. When you step up to the trailhead and you look out, it's the most familiar thing. It's like I've done this 100 times before. But I've never done it today. And I'm a different guy than I am today. And I do it for a different reason. Even though it's a similar kind of reason, it's been extended. The meaning of why I do this stuff is so much deeper. And it's so much more intertwined with who I am as like an online coach and creator who talks about these types of things, right? And I have to talk about these kinds of things. Like, I'm required to. I required myself to do it because I chose this. But suffice to say, right? Each of these trail runs in the past like 3 weeks has been this incredible philosophic journey into the self, because I get to relive an embodied experience that I've done so often. But I get to do it as a new person. Like, I've never moved away from Canada before. So coming back to Canada for 4 weeks after living in a different country, no matter how similar it is, like, I grew up on the Great Lakes. I'm living on the Great Lakes now. There's no real culture shock between Canada and America. Sorry, everybody. These are like the most similar countries in the world to each other. And there's like little quirky differences, but like there's pretty much the same. It's like pretty much the same. And whatever stats you want to kind of throw at me, it's just belied by experience. I'm just telling you, go to a city in Canada, go to a city in America. They're basically the same. Go to a rural place in America, go to a rural place in Canada. They're basically the same. There's differences, but in essence, like, they're the most similar two places in the world. We should be the best of friends, which is why what's happening now in between the two countries is so tragic and sad. And I hate having to justify either not hating living in America as a Canadian, which is so stupid. It's also stupid, guys. So, you come back and there's all these like different things. There's all these different feelings and sensations, right? But you get to the trail, and in particular for me, one thing that we don't have in Chicago and the North Shore there is access to good trails. Like there's no good trails. I'm sorry, guys. There's just no good trails. There's nothing that's dynamic, that has elevation, that is single track, that is accessible. It just doesn't exist. Like I go to this spot out in Barrington. Shout out Lane Hudson, my Montreal Canadiens defensive prodigy. He's from Barrington. His parents on the ice arena there have this weird dream of somehow getting Lane Hudson to come out to these Barrington Hills and go on a run, but that's not going to happen. But it's okay, but it's mostly like grassland and horse trails. There's not a lot. There's no technical. It's all wide. The only thing that's technical about this trail is that not a lot of people go on some of it, and it's just overgrown. So you have to run through this disgusting long grass. Ugh, it's not good running. It's not good running, but like even that's the best I can do. Otherwise, I got to drive an hour and a half up to Wisconsin to get back up to the escarpment, which is good. But I can't be driving an hour and a half every week, 2 ways. I can't 3 hours commuting for trail running every week. Like it's not reasonable. It's not reasonable at all. So I don't have any trails. So one of the things that I'm thinking about when I come back to these trails, it's like, how am I going to do? How am I going to do? I haven't been running up hills. I haven't been running on technical track. How are my feet going to hold up? Am I going to be able to go fast? Like, what are the things that I want to focus on? What are the things that I'm going to think about? What am I going to feel? What am I going to feel out there, right? Because I'm not the same person, and this is not the same river. This is not the same river, even though it is the same river, and I am the same person. So these kind of runs, and I'm going to pick two. I'm going to pick two in particular. So one is at Rouge, and the other's at Mono, right? I've run Rouge a couple times just because some of my wife's family lives out in that direction. It's not that far from where I'm staying, and it's a little bit more accessible. Mono is just about an hour and 10-minute drive north. Rouge is kind of like a 25-minute drive east. Let's do the Mono one first, because this is my favorite place to run in the world. There's nothing like a forest trail on a big hill or a big cliff. Like, I run in some pretty incredible places, mountains, mesas, jungles. Like, there's nothing like a forest trail. There's nothing like a windy forest trail where you can't really see what's up around the next turn. Every hill you see, you can see the top, so you're obligated to run. Like, there's no hill that's big enough where you literally have to start walking. Like, when you're running up a mountain, like, you just go up and then you go down. Like, and that's cool because you get great views and, it's kind of fun, but it's not the best running. It's not dynamic. It's not just this adventure. You can't go fast. You can go fast down, but you ain't going fast up. I've gone up mountains in Arizona, right? Like, you go up like a 2,000-foot mountain and you go down. And where I'm running on the escarpment, I get the same amount of elevation, but I'm not going up and down. It's like up and down and up. And, it's all over the place. And you can't see where you're going. So there's always this little mystery. Whereas a lot of trail running, it's wide open. You can see all around you, which is nice. Again, it's good for views, but in terms of actually enjoying the running, there's nothing like a forest trail. There's nothing in the world like a forest trail that's hilly. Best trail running ever. Absolutely best trail running ever. Come at me with any other environment, you will lose. I guarantee it. You will lose. So what are some of the things that I want to look at? Well, number one, I don't have any predetermined idea of what this comparison is supposed to be. It's on feel. It's on experience, right? And the one thing that I've noticed, I'm just going to do the runs together. The one thing I've noticed in both of these sort of Rouge Valley and Mono Cliffs runs is like hills are easy. Hills are easy. One thing that's definitely happened since I've been in the North Shore is I've increased my VO2 max by running fast on the roads. And when I get to some of these hills, like to give you an example, when I go to Rouge, within the very first, whatever, like 0.2 miles, you're up into this series of 3 hills back to back to back. And together, these 3 hills, There's like 150 feet. So you go up one, and then there's like a tiny little, and then you're right up into the next one, and then there's a tiny little, and then you're right up into the next one. So it's basically one hill, but there's kind of like three sections of this hill. And I'm not even talking about pacing or how fast I'm going. I'm talking about the way my legs feel and the way my cardio is responding. Like when I'm running up this hill, my legs aren't tired. When I'm running up this hill, I feel as if my cardio is just like unbeatable. Same thing in monocliffs. Like there's lots of up and downs, but my favorite track in monocliffs is this half marathon. And you kind of, the way the park is set up is like there's this oval cliff on one side, and there's this giant, the big Niagara Escarpment cliff on the other side. There's like a little rift that goes through it. You can run on the bottom, but you can sort of get up on one cliff, run around it, go down, get up on the other cliff. And to get onto this oval cliff, there's two ways to get up it. There's like a gradual way to get up it, which is the way I take the first time. And then I come back around and I do the opposite loop right around mile 9 of this 13 miles. In order to do that, you got to do steep 20, 30, 40% incline, switchbacks, 120 feet, all the way up the side of the cliff. And both of these hills, both of the times I run them, it's clear I'm not the same person because I'm smoking them. Like, to me, these are like the tests. And it's, it's a little bit in my mind, but I'm not thinking, okay, when I get to the hill, I really need to test myself. I really want to see. It's more of like the observation through the experience. Like you recognize you're like 3/4 of the way up and you're like, man, my legs are tired. I remember feeling my legs being tired. I remember going quick and like dying and not being able to catch my breath. The last couple times that I'd be doing this when I'm pushing. And so when I'm pushing here in these other runs, I don't feel that. And that's like this incredible evidence of growth to me. And it's physical growth, clearly. But one of the things I mentioned off the top is I want to talk about the self-discovery, and I want to talk about sort of the spiritual nature of this. And because running by feel is related to passion. Passion comes from the heart. The heart is where the spirit lives, and the heart's also the place of truth. When I'm able to, let's say, validate the way that I feel with some numbers and with some experiences, this like confirms my sense of self, like no other activity, nothing independent. Like my kids, my wife, the people who I coach, they are all very important in helping me confirm a sense of myself. But in terms of the things I do to know me, the trail running is number one. The trail running is the number one thing when it comes to know who I am. And when I'm confirmed, where it's like, okay, when I move to Chicago, I'm going to look for trails, but if I don't have many near me, I'm going to pivot. And I have pivoted. And I've pivoted to a lot of, again, like fast road running, but not in anybody else's style, just kind of my own style. One of my favorite runs to do are progression runs. And I do a lot of progression runs where you start out and then it's like every mile's got to go faster. And I do progression runs and then I just do all outs. And in my mind, when I moved to Chicago, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to start doing some miles, but like, I don't want to run a fast mile. What I say earlier, running a psychological terror. I'm also training for a backyard ultra, which like you don't need to go fast, but you want to be a better runner. And so I sort of settled in on a lot of quick 3 miles, a lot of quick 5Ks, not trying to like go the fastest, but it's like a mile warm up, fast 3 miles in the middle, and then like a mile and a half like of just coasting and cruising on the way back. So you can't like take yourself right to the line or to the limit of like a max test, but I'm hauling. And so I've been doing that a lot. in Chicago, especially now that it's, it was summer and spring, and I've been running on this beautiful road that's right next to the beach, so I can jump into Lake Michigan right after all these runs. And it just confirms to me again that like my intuition and feel in the training is right. And I've used that comparison of trail running. It's more like a year over year comparison. It's not a week to week comparison. It's like this year I ran this was my track. Like I was running a 10-mile track. Now I'm running a 13-mile track, and I feel better. Like I'm stronger. I'm going faster. Right? So when I am able to feel my way through a familiar place on a trail and notice an ease and a confidence that's still there, even though there's been a great absence, to me, this is like the highest validation of self, right? It just means like I'm on the mark. My aim is true. And I'm getting incredible validating signals like from my own effort, but also back from the forest. The forest teaches you a lot of things. It'll humble you quickly, but it will give you praise when you deserve it as well. And this to me is like the greatest part of whatever setting a record or doing a PR. It's not like the number. It's not the number itself. It's this recognition of the person who's able to break the record. When I come back at 39 after 12 years of packing on miles on my legs, and what do people say? They're like, oh, like everything goes downhill after 30, right? Lamos, losers. These people just quit on themselves, and they expect you to quit too. So as I am about to turn the page, you hit 40, it's like half of life is gone, almost half of life, maybe more than half of life. What are you going to rest on? How are you going to know yourself? How are you going to carry yourself forward, right? And being able to go back and dominate these old trails is just such valid proof to me of my journey, my path, my aim, where I'm headed, as a husband, as a father, as a coach, as an athlete. My life's been turned upside down like 10 times in the last 10 years. Right? And the ability to get back up, the ability to dust myself off, the ability to look at a new route and say, yeah, that's the route I kind of want to take. That's all bred through trail running. It's literally all bred through trail running, and through the confidence and through the self-knowledge that I get through the self-discovery process of athletics. And when I just reflect on this Heraclitus quote, I'm just grateful for the ability to recognize how change and permanence sort of like interact with each other, so that I can appreciate how time has changed me, but how in essence I'm not allowing the time to dictate who I am on the inside. So despite all of the different changes, I'm older, I live in a different place, I do different work. The essence of the trail run to gain spiritual willpower and knowledge is stronger than ever. Like it's growing. And that is only that's only possible through sort of like consistency, a constancy. And I don't really have a conclusion. I don't think I've said it many times. I don't care about conclusions on this podcast. I'm just interested in exploring things. But I do want you to be able to apply something from what I'm talking about. What is it that we should be applying? What's the lesson? What's the takeaway? Even if you're the different person, even if the river's not the same, there's a trust. There's a trust in character. What is character? Is character like the biological part of you, like the cells reproducing? No, character is how I carry myself consistently. Character is my virtue. Character is, I can bet how this person is going to react, because 9 times out of 10, this is how they react. Right? We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nobody does the same thing all the time. But we're known by our qualities. We're known by our virtues. We're known by our characteristics, which we display as often as possible, as consistently as possible. So despite you being a changing person, despite you living in changing environments, you can always bring the best of yourself to the equation, which is your character. That's the interesting thread here. So when I understand the parameters of change and how they impact me, and I can feel this and I can see this in athletics maybe more clearly than anything, in terms of I used to be able to run this far, now I can run this far. I used to be able to lift this much weight, now I can lift that much weight. Recognize that the change of those reveals a constancy of self, so that we can think of Heraclitus as, I may not be exactly the same man, but my spirit and essence and character are so similar, you would not even recognize the difference. And there clearly is a difference, again, because you're different. The context is different. You're older. You have different experiences and different viewpoints. But that doesn't mean the center of yourself has changed. That doesn't mean you, in essence, have changed. If, again, you're tuned into those deep internal signals, which, again, playing sports you love, one of the reasons why I'm such a big proponent of promoting this for people. I read something from somebody's like, I don't think exercise should be fun. I'm like, that's cool, but if you just think exercise is punishment, then nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to do it. And eventually you're not going to do it. Otherwise you're lying to yourself, because there's some fun involved in it. Fun is a powerful signal of interest, right? And you're not doing the things you're not interested in. I don't care whatever objective data will say, oh, you should do this because of your heart health. We're not machines. We're not humanoids. We're not robots. Like, we don't respond to those types of incentives. And if you think I'm wrong, then we have the most information ever about how unhealthy people are, and we have the most information ever about how to get healthy. And we have the most unhealthy population. Great. So that's not working. That doesn't work. Fun is the spirit of the signal. Interest and passion. These are signals of the spirit. Pardon me. And anytime I'm in tune with the spirit and I'm fully engaged in the activity, then I can hear. Then I can actually hear the inner signal that's coming out, that's so often blocked out by external distractions and obligations and the busyness of life. And I get it. It's like, this is why we need silence and stillness, and why people want to meditate or do cold plunges, or any of these things that stop the time from passing so fast to get you into the present, so that you can hear. You can hear what's inside. And once you actually tap into that frequency and you can hear it, that's the constant part. Everything else in your life is going to change. It's going to change 1,000 times over. This is the part of you that cannot change. It's the part of you that never changes. It never changes. What happens is people kill it. People kill it. It's called your conscience, and people kill it by ignoring it. Every time you ignore it and you act against it, it dies a little bit. You cut it. You cut it with a knife. And after 1,000 times of doing it, it's gone. Good luck getting it. Good luck. You've trained yourself. You trained yourself out of your conscience. What a tragedy. Right? So you use the athletics. You use trail running if you're me, because it's I got hooked the first time I did it. There's some way of moving your body that's going to bring this deep meaning. Shoot, guys, I was just reading in the Viktor Frankl book how intensity itself creates meaning. Intensity and purpose it doesn't matter what activity you're doing, that creates the meaning of the activity. And you just think about that for 1 second, and it's so obviously true that intensity, if I ratchet up my intensity level, then I start to care more, which makes it more meaningful. Right? And when it comes to the physical, you're not going to marshal intensity towards anything you don't care about, to anything you don't enjoy. So, I don't think exercise should be fun. I'm like, I guarantee you find it fun to pick something heavy up and to put it down. I guarantee that person does. But there's like this discipline, or like exercise should be serious and it's health and it's objective and bah. So, sport you love allows you to recognize change. It allows you to recognize change in you and change in the environment, which is great because we want to be aware of change and we want to flow with change because it's the one constant of life is change. However, I don't want my inner signal to be distorted. I don't want to live in discord and disharmony with the inner signal. That's a part of me that can never change. And I gain fortitude, knowledge, and just sort of like general awareness of these phenomena when I engage in sports that I love, when I play them, when I care about them, when I bring my full heart into it. Then I care, then I can hear, and then I can appraise and I can judge against the change. Have I changed? I've been forced to change so many times because I won't back down on what's inside. I won't negotiate with the inner signal. I go where it tells me to go. That's constant. That's the part of me that I need sports for. I need to hear it. I need to be reminded as often as possible, and I need it to be strong. I need it to be strong so that I can marshal it when I need it, so that I can look back when I am 9 toes in the grave and I got one little pinky toe sticking out and I'm about to say goodbye, that I can look back and say, like through all of the change of life, through all of the adversity and the struggles and the challenges, I was able to bring my best self, my true self, to the fore and make the right decisions, which were the hard decisions. And I was able to do that all the time. That's the kind of constancy that I desire. That's the kind of constancy we should be striving for. And it's a type of character constancy that's a little bit outside of this Heraclitus quote. But there's another Heraclitus quote. Let me see if I can pull it up so that we can end this off, because I gotta go teach a seminar here. Here we go. Heraclitus, the content of your character is your choice. Day by day, what you choose, what you think about, and what you do is who you become. So choice by choice, day by day, right? Are you going to be constantly thinking about that spirit, that character, that virtue, that principle? Are those the choices that you're going to make? Because playing sports that you love are going to allow you to make the consistent right decision when it comes to those deeply meaningful elements of self. Play sports for self-discovery, play sports for self-knowledge, play sports for self-mastery, play sports so that you can always bring the best of yourself to whatever changing situations life has for you. Thank you for listening. I got a very exciting episode coming up for next week. It's going to be a surprise. It's going to be a good one. Thanks for listening, team. I appreciate each and every one of you. Peace and love.